Welcome to Growing Your Firm, brought to you by Jetpack Workflow. Here's your host, David Cristello.
Hey everybody, Dave Cristello here, founder and CEO of Jetpack Workflow and host of Growing Your Firm. Today's guest is Max Minsker. He's the founder and CEO at Bookmate. I was just telling him right before the call, I was like, gosh, we're going to have some fun with this interview. You know why? Because I could just tell, even looking at his website, it was positioned like a software company. I'm like, oh, this is kind of interesting. So we're going to dive into his packaging and pricing, how he established Bookmate. We're also going to get into what he was doing a little bit before Bookmate. He might have an atypical path to building a successful firm. So we're going to unpack so much during today's interview. But first off, Max, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, David.
Yep, absolutely. So Bookmate, what is it? What does it do? Who do you do it for?
Sure. So we are a remote accounting firm, and primarily we offer tax returns. Actually, I started it originally thinking that it would be more of a bookkeeping and financial company, thus being called Bookmate, right? Like a mate for your books. But then there was a lot more demand for tax work, I found, than bookkeeping work and financial work. So over time, it pivoted into a tax firm. So what we do is we are like a digital first tax preparation firm. We primarily focus just on that tax piece. And we do it for a lot of new companies, right? Companies that have just formed in the past couple of years. They're trying to establish an accounting relationship and get their first couple tax returns out of the way, whether that be in e-commerce or in software or in any other type of small business or consulting area. But we work with a lot of new founders, a lot of SMBs, and it's all digital. So that's a little bit of a overview on how I started it and then who we're serving today.
Yeah, I love it. So how long have you been running the business?
3-4 years now. Boy, it's hard to remember, but yeah,
Okay.
no, a couple of years. So fairly new.
And
Team size, we've got 4 full-time. And then, of course, we have a large part-time staff during the accounting season because we're really focused on tax prep. Our work is very seasonal. We are super, super busy January to April, and then not so much at all during even the summer, but especially like in Q4 after the deadlines.
okay, and I'm going to ask you a question that's a little bit atypical for the show, and we'll get a little bit of your background because you had an exited a company to the Timberwolves, which is not something I say a lot on the podcast. But is it bootstrapped? Is it funded? Are you building there's all these kind of funded, scalable, tech-enabled services that are coming on the market? So what's the origin behind the launch?
100% bootstrapped. I originally was hoping that there would be some sort of venture play or that I would raise money. But once I started talking to customers and started especially serving customers, one thing about tax services is that it's very profitable, right? People give you money and then you perform services for them. And if you're spending more to do the service than you're collecting when you are pricing it, then you're not running a very good business, right? So you're making money and it's profitable, right? When you get that payment, but it's not super scalable. I had to learn that the hard way. So originally I had intended it as, okay, maybe we'll get some venture capital. Maybe we'll try to be a super scaler like you were talking about. But as I got into it, it was very profitable, but it wasn't very scalable. And I just decided that I wanted to keep it bootstrapped and it didn't really make sense to try to turn it into something it wasn't.
Yeah. And so I saw you have somewhat of an accounting background. You studied accounting, but were you doing all the fulfillment or did you immediately have to hire somebody almost day one in the business?
I had to hire somebody day one and I contracted it out. I was able to find some people on the side where basically what I did is, you were right, I have a small amount of experience in accounting and finance, studied it, but really what I did is 2 things. I bootstrapped my knowledge base myself. I read as much as I could find on accounting and specifically the types of returns that we were doing for people so that I could talk to clients about it and sell it. And then I found some CPAs that I could use to contract out the actual filling out of the returns and stuff like that. But I had to get a knowledge base of myself. Okay, what information do I need to collect? What things do I need to be aware of? How to position it to the customer and how to provide value. And then from there, take that information, take all the intake, give it to a CPA so that they can effectively do it. Now I have, of course, full-time staff and CPAs in-house that kind of manage that side completely. But yeah, I was taping it together at the very beginning, so to speak.
So it sounds like you have some sort of skill set for acquiring clients. So it sounds like in the early days, you're acquiring clients. You knew how to provide oversight on the service fulfillment, but you were not doing the fulfillment itself. You were contracting that out. So what were you doing to get the first 10, 20 clients to even go into step two, which is finding fulfillment?
Yeah. So originally I was just emailing people and doing Facebook because that
What would you
specialty
email
was.
them? Because like they get emails all the time. So what would you say so differently that was catching people's attention?
I would focus on really small companies or companies that just formed, were companies that were like in like entrepreneur forums and stuff like
Okay.
that. People were like, hey, just started my first side project. And I'd email them and be like, hey, do you need any like help with taxes? And that's where I really got my start. And that's why our services were priced for people who are just getting started. We're not charging $5,000 for a super complex corporate return for some big company. It's, hey, do you need just the basics done and just the bare minimum compliance and filings? Because if you don't have that complicated of operations, if you've got $5,000 of revenue, you're not going to pay $5,000 for taxes, but it can be done pretty easily and cheaply. So that's how I got my start, was just going to people who were just getting their start as well and basically saying, hey, you're getting your start, I'm getting my start. Maybe we could figure something out together. And then from there, was able to pivot it into partnership channels. Once I got a few clients, got a few people interested and started serving people, then I was able to go to partners or go to other people and say, hey, we can add tax services in with your offerings and stuff like that, or you can refer us clients and grow organically from there.
So what's an example of a really great partner you got early on to help drive referrals?
So one example of a partner is we'll get maybe like a formation company. Those companies are pretty solid companies and they start LLCs or C Corps. And then we'll come in and say, hey, you form companies. Why don't you put it on your website that we will do taxes for your companies and we'll give them a discount. So an example would be a formation company who then puts us on their website. People start coming to us and then we'll just put even like a Calendly link or something up there. And then we'll start generating traffic that way.
Got it. Very cool. So at what point did you think about hiring your first full-time employee? Was it about 100 grand a year, 200 grand a year, less, more? What was the inflection point where you're like, okay, there's enough here. Let's get a full-time employee.
David, you're right on the money. It was right in between 100 and 200K. Once I did maybe 120K, I was thinking to myself, this is probably more than I could realistically keep doing by myself and providing like a high quality level of service. And I think it was basically at the point where I had like maybe 150K, but I knew that I could grow more. Like I was like, okay, in the future, I think I can do a lot more than that. So I feel comfortable bringing on somebody full time. First full time hire was CPA. And then my second full time hire was an account manager, like sales, account manager, basically handling a bunch of client communications. And that first hire happened, like you said, right around 150K. And then the second one was shortly after. And then that was the core team for a while. But then once we got past 500,000, then I needed to hire a few more people just to do the same things, but just more of it.
Yeah. In that range, how do you think about financing that hire? I think people sometimes will talk with firms and they get really stuck, which is I'm taking a salary now. If I can't grow this business, so if it's at 150, if I can't get it to 250 or 300 or whatever it may be, I'm gonna have to take a salary cut. And they get really into this. Oh man, I don't know. Maybe I should wait a little bit more. And we see firms try to push it to 200, 250. And they just get so burned out trying to grind to the upper limits of what a one person can juggle. So what gave you the confidence? Was it the pipeline? Was it the pipeline? You're like, I can grow this thing if I had help.
Totally. So the first thing that gave me confidence was that the first year that I ran the business, I did all the sales calls myself. So I did probably, I don't even know, but probably 300 or 400 client meetings. And
In your first year?
yeah,
And that was cold email, partnership referrals, and
once I
did you
got
do
the
Facebook
partnership
ads?
referrals, that was not, I would say my first like 50 to 100 was from like emails and Facebook and finding people online. And then after that, it was mostly partnership referrals or organic traffic or referrals from other clients.
When you say Facebook, are you DMing people on Facebook in groups or are you running ads?
Running ads.
Okay.
And there was a lot of like bad sales meetings, for example, from those ads, right? It's not like there was 50 sales meetings, 100 sales meetings, and it was 100 great sales meetings. It was like 100 sales meetings, and 20 of them were a total waste of time. 20 of them were a waste of time. 20 of them were decent. 20 of them were good. And 20 of them resulted in maybe some kind of sale, right? So you have to take a lot of shots on goal to make a few.
What do you do when you know it's a bet? Have you found effective ways to wrap up a meeting prematurely if you're like, oh my gosh, I got to get out of here as soon as possible? Or do you like take it on the chin and you grind it out for the 30-minute time block? What do you do?
David, I built that into the model because after about 2 weeks of doing sales calls, I started making them all only 15 minutes.
Okay.
Because I was like, there's a sufficiently large number of bad meetings that I need to just make them all 15 minutes. And then I got really efficient at doing them as fast as possible. But let's say that it was a really good meeting, really good client, and they were like, hey, I just need 15 more minutes of your time. Great. No problem. But scheduling them all for 15 minutes enabled me to weed out a ton of people without having the whole.
Hey, growing a firm community, David here. Just want to share a quick note about Jetpack Workflow, our accounting workflow software. Now, for almost a decade, we've helped 5,000 plus accountants, bookkeepers, and firm owners use Jetpack Workflow to better organize accounting workflows, automate recurring tasks, and easily track and monitor client work. Never miss a deadline again. Stop using messy Post-it notes, generic tools, legacy systems, or spreadsheets to handle workflows and bring sanity to your client work. Now head on over to jetpackworkflow.com. That's jetpackworkflow.com to get started with a 14-day free trial or schedule a one-on-one demo with us. All right, now let's get back to the show. I see. So do you put, like, for the people that are great prospects, do you put a secret buffer of 15 minutes after the 15 minutes, or do you have to schedule a second call at that point?
Sometimes you have to schedule a second call, but what I'll do is if I don't have a meeting after, I'll just go over.
Yeah.
So it's just, you just feel it out.
Yeah. So from a price point perspective, you mentioned early on, you kept it at people that are doing side hustles, tax returns are priced for your side hustle. Fast forward, you're 3-4 years into it. Is that still pretty similar perspective or approach to packaging and pricing, or has it changed much from the original premise?
It is actually still pretty similar because we've gotten in pretty deep with that audience at this point. And so that is our core consumer base, because what a lot of CPAs will come on and tell you is that it's better to increase the price and serve higher quality clients. And that's true. That is definitely true. Like clients who have multi-million-dollar businesses that need bookkeeping. And that's true for sure. At the same time, of course, if I could charge 5 times as much for a tax return, you'd love to. Your core customer base is people that are coming to you when they've started something and they need help. And then their friends start something and they say, hey, my friend just started something. They need help too. It's not so simple to kind of raise your prices or only go with the higher quality clients, because you get a reputation for serving a certain base. And they are like, hey, if we're just getting off the ground and we need a cost-effective tax return that's not that complicated, these are the people to go to. And I'm going to recommend that all the people that I know that are doing some of the things to go to. Now, there are some customers that are starting to grow with us, right? People we did in the first year that grew and grew that are now a little bit more complicated. So for those people, of course, we have to charge more in order to provide more service, right? Because their returns are more complicated. But for the majority of people, honestly, I haven't really increased the prices that much. And I don't really plan to, because I think that that's our core base now. And we're happy to serve that audience, and it's going pretty well for us. So I don't want to disrupt that. But maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know, but that's just
well, it's interesting about it. And the margins are good. The good margins.
Yeah, because the reason why the margins are good is because we've built our practice around those inexpensive, fairly simple returns. Because the thing about a simple return is you're not going to need to collect nearly as much information, because there's not as much information to collect. So if you build your model around, we're not going to be collecting that much information, the returns are going to be fairly simple, and they're all going to be fairly similar, then you can build accordingly and really make it a lot more efficient, right? We're not going to need to do hour-long discovery calls. We're not going to need to collect 15 different bank statements from 3 different banks. We're not going to need to be doing somebody's personal return with all of their real estate and stuff like that. We're not going to have to even build for those complexities unless we're doing the one-off. So that means we can provide a much more streamlined service to the clients that we are serving, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, it does. So you mentioned part-time hires. Before I get into part-time hires, I think there's an interesting trend going on where you're right. People are saying, go up market, raise your prices, have fewer clients. And you're right. I think strategically, the fun thing about strategy is like 2 different strategies can be successful. So I think a predominant strategy that's happening a lot in the market, and we've had a lot of interviews on it, is you move upstream, you go into some sort of advisory, you go into CFO, you charge 5, 6, 7 grand a month, you have fewer clients, and you have the benefits of that kind of business. And then part of these interviews, then we hear people about people saying they're selling off parts of their client base, selling off or just referring them elsewhere, like literally just, for lack of a better word, getting rid of them. And
Yep.
it's like, where are they going? They're going somewhere. Like they're gonna scattered everywhere. And we've also had some interviews recently where people are like, I love those clients. Bring those clients to me. You don't want them? Great. You've done all this work to build the relationship. You've been working with them for years. You want to offload them to somebody that'll do the work? Give them to me. And you know what? Many times they'll get them for free. It's like free acquisition. It's like unbelievable for somebody that's run Facebook ads. Imagine it's like, here's a free client. Here's free hundreds of dollars. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Each model will work. It's just when you try to be a little bit of this one, a little bit of that one, that's where I think it gets a little complicated because they're just two different cost structures. In one, you have to hire essentially high level controllers to help you scale and CFOs to help you scale. And another one that's different. So your packaging, your pricing, your service fulfillment should look differently. So by extension of that, part-time hires, you mentioned that you got a lot of people part-time early on. Where did you find some, and you have a lot of part-timers today, so where are you finding the talent?
LinkedIn.
And
That's where I
you're just
advertise.
posting part-time or 20 hours a week or something like that?
Yup, yup. And what we'll do is even for it depends on the type of role because for it's part-time CPA or something like that, you need to be a lot more strategic. But if you're just looking for somebody to do data entry, data collection, or basic customer service work, we'll use people who are a lot of times students or like getting their CPA, right? They'll be like, oh, I'm doing my master's degree right now and I'm studying for the CPA, trying to get some experience in an accounting firm, or I've done a previous accounting internship and now I need another accounting internship because I'm going to go into an accounting firm next summer or whatever. We'll take a lot of those people and they'll do data entry or really basic stuff. And since a lot of our returns are very simple, it's not like you need a CPA, let's say, for the company that submits their document and then they need you. Of course, you need to transfer it in your tax software. You need to type the company's name in. You need to put their EIN in a box, right? Like you need to do all this work for a tax return, and not all of it needs to be done by a CPA, right? You can have some data entry and some really basic tasks that somebody who's getting their CPA is perfectly qualified for or can definitely handle. So that's like most of what we'll do for like part-time labor. Now, if you need somebody more sophisticated or you need to hire a CPA, you need somebody to sign returns, review returns, that's going to be a little bit more in depth. And for that, I'll try to source on LinkedIn as well, but oftentimes I have to spend a lot more money on LinkedIn ads to get people who are qualified for that. So that's like always a challenge for sure. But
What do you pay the part-timers?
the part-timers, it depends on how qualified they are and what they'll negotiate for, but 20, 25 bucks an hour for somebody who is maybe even they're doing their last semester of their master's degree and they're working for us Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then they're going to class on all day Thursday or Friday or whatever. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's smart. Okay, so LinkedIn's been the main driver of talent, both part-time and full-time. When you go full-time, you need to promote or pay a lot more to get in front of more competitive candidates, it sounds like. Is that all fair?
Way more. Yeah. For a CPA, of course, you're not going to be
What do you
paying them
spend? What are you spending on ads?
on ads for recruiting.
Yeah, for LinkedIn, let's say LinkedIn, you're going after a CPA. You say you have to spend a lot more to attract that candidate pool. So like,
Part-time, probably $500 to $1,000 for a CPA, but for somebody to help part-time, probably maybe $50.
okay, yeah, super reasonable.
Yeah, really simple. Because there's a lot of people who, we had somebody who helped us out part-time last year where she had just graduated with her degree in accounting and she was going to be starting her master's degree in the fall.
Yeah,
Right. So it's like January. She's, hey, just graduated in December, starting my master's degree in the fall. I'm going to get my CPA. So looking to work full time for the tax season in between my undergrad and my master's and get some experience. So that's one example of somebody that we would have come on board where we're like, great, this is a college educated person. They've got previous experience in accounting and they can help us with some of our simple processes and data entry and get some experience. And it's a good deal for both sides.
yeah, I love that. I love that. Well, speaking of constructing the team, I'm assuming you're fully remote.
Yes.
So what are your communication touch points? For example, do you run a daily huddle? Do you do a Monday morning kickoff? What is your pulse in a given week to stay in touch with your team?
Totally. I've recruited a lot from actually my community. Like my first CPA hire was actually a friend of mine who had gotten their CPA. He got a CPA and then he had worked in doing taxes for hedge funds. He had worked in bookkeeping for startups where he managed a portfolio. And then he did small business tax returns. And so when we started doing a lot of small business tax returns, I was like, this is a perfect fit. Like I knew that he was really professional and did great work. And so I was like, you got to come work for me. So eventually I recruited him, was able to get him to come on board. And so I know a lot of my team members on a personal level. So that really helps. We communicate in Slack constantly. So Slack is our hub for what we use for communication. And then I have two to three stand-ups a week with the accounting team. And then I have stand-up every morning with my top sales guy and like sales/account management /customer service. So that's how I branch the organization, where I have like people who just do accounting and then I have people who just do customer service and sales. So then I actually have those stand-ups separately. And then the head of the accounting side and the head of the sales side, they also meet independently.
How did you hiring a salesperson, sales account, customer support, as client facing coordinator? It's always a big sticking point for firms that we talk to. So when you were looking for somebody, we were looking for somebody that was good at what? Account management? Were they good at sales? Were they good at support? And then do they get commission? Do they get bonus? What's this whole role look like?
Yep. So mine is super unique. But what I was looking for was somebody that was young and ambitious like me, right? Basically, I had an intern because what I did is I was doing all the sales and all the support myself at first. So I was like, okay, I have 50 hours a week of sales and support that I am doing right now. Why don't I take the 20 hours of that's the simplest, carve it off and have an intern to support me? So I hired a couple interns, and one of them was rock solid right away. He was a senior in college, and he did it in tandem with his last semester. He was rock solid. He was really motivated, really ambitious, and really confident. And so then after he graduated, I said, hey, we're growing fast. You got to come work for me. So I was able to convince him to come aboard full time and work for me, which has worked out great. And now he leads the sales and service org. And the compensation is mostly base and then commission on top, and then some bonuses for firm-wide goals. So it is a little bit more base salary oriented, I'd say, than typical commission roles, like than software sales AE or something like that. It's definitely more base oriented just because the incentives they don't function quite the same in accounting. And also he has a lot of like leadership responsibilities as well. So it's like, I don't want it to be, I don't want the incentives to be misaligned in a sense. Yeah. But yeah, that's how I sourced it. And that's how I structure the pay and how it works.
Nice. So you're saying probably like 80-90% base, and then there's a little commission on top, and then firm-wide bonus. For the firm-wide bonuses, is that based entirely on top line revenue or profit, or how do you unpack those?
Top line revenue.
Okay. And that gets paid out yearly?
Yep.
Okay. Nice. I'm going to ask you a question. We're really going to go to a vulnerable place, Max. So I hope you're okay with sharing some stuff. What tax software do you use?
Okay, that is actually an interesting question. The first year that I did this business, I didn't really know what I was doing. And I just said, what's the best tax software? I talked to my contractor, what they wanted to use, and I ended up using CCH Access, which was really expensive. And then when I hired my CPA, my friend who came to work for me full time, he was like, dude, this is overkill. We don't need this. Actually, I've used Drake Tax at a different job and has everything we need. And it's actually going to be much easier to use and faster for our use case. So I just said, all right, I trust you. You've filed way more returns than I have, obviously. So let's do it. We switched and it's been great. It actually has been a really good experience. And I think our accounting team likes using it way better. So yeah, we use Drake and we like it.
Nice. So final things before we wrap up here. You were the co-founder of this company called 2K Analytics. You exited to the Minnesota Timberwolves. So
you got it.
professional basketball team. How did you go from starting 2K Analytics, and then you were involved within their, it seemed like, gaming division for
Yep.
almost 2 years? You were an account executive at another place, and then you launched Bookmate. What prompted you? It's just we would do a lot of interviews. It's like I was at a mid-market firm and I wanted to do better. I wanted the freedom or the client services. You have an atypical background where you had this 2K Analytics and you exited to this team. What prompted you to launch Bookmate then?
Great question. It really doesn't make any sense when you look at it on paper. But basically the thread that runs throughout all of them is that I wanted to be an entrepreneur and I wanted to carve my own path. So I started off working in sales and I liked it. And I have a lot of respect for people working in sales. I've done a ton of sales for Bookmate, but it just wasn't something I could see myself doing for the rest of my career personally. And I just didn't like working in that big company structure. I wanted to break out and do my own thing. So I started this company, right? Like you said, and got an opportunity from that to go work for the Minnesota Timberwolves. I started doing some consulting work with them on the side while I was running that company. And then they said basically, hey, what would it take for you to come inside? So I did that for a couple of years. That was my dream because I'm a huge NBA fan, huge basketball fan, always have been. But when I got inside, I kept getting that entrepreneurial bug. I just couldn't shake it. Whereas I'm doing this great thing, I'm working in the NBA, which I always wanted to do, but it's just not the same as working for myself. I really want to work for myself. So then I started trying other businesses, trying other concepts. And eventually I was trying to start a bookkeeping company because I was like, okay, did some studying in accounting and finance. I had originally worked in finance. Maybe that's a natural fit. So I started trying that on the side. And lo and behold, all these people start telling me they want taxes. I said, taxes? I don't do taxes. But when enough people start telling you that they want taxes, you say, all right, I guess I'll do some taxes. So I figured it out, and that's how I got into this whole world. So really, what I would say is I got pulled into it by the market. I didn't really intend to come out here and start doing tax returns, but the market gets what the market wants, and they wanted me to do tax returns. So here I am.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Max, if somebody wants to reach out, say thank you, have follow-up questions, whatever it may be, what's the best way for our community to connect with you?
Absolutely. So personally, it would definitely be either on Twitter, Max Minsker, or LinkedIn. Max Minsker, you can message me. For our firm, obviously, our website is trybookmate.com. So if you're interested in that, you can go there. But for me personally, probably LinkedIn would be the best. So
okay.
I'm easy to find.
Perfect. Hey, if you couldn't jot down all the notes, I have a whole page of notes here of just talking about whether it's looking at part-time help, or it's thinking about packaging and pricing, whether it's thinking about full-time running sales process. Maybe if you couldn't jot down all the takeaways from today, we're going to link it up at jetpackworkflow.com/blog. That's jetpackworkflow.com/blog. If you enjoyed today's interview, man, leave a review, please. It means the world to us to help get the name out. And if you really loved it, if Max said something, you're like, oh man, he was talking about hiring that sales account manager and it really ignited something for you, share it with a fellow firm owner that needed to hear it. It's a great way to say thank you to both of us for today's episode. Max, it's been a real treat. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, David.
Thank you for joining Growing Your Firm, the podcast series for global, small, and medium-sized businesses ready to scale and increase profits. You can check out more podcasts by following the links in the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you're listening. At Jetpack Workflow, we're all about maximizing returns for accounting firms and CPAs. Check out more podcasts on growing your firm and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.